Van Mercer, a seasoned security specialist, attends his ex-wife Natalie's birthday party, only to be shunned by her new husband, Bradley, and her parents. When his daughter Lily senses danger, Vanna uncovers a chilling conspiracy involving Bradley, aka Preston Rayburn, and Natalie's father, Theodore, tied to the shadowy Obsidian Solutions Group. As Van unravels their web of money laundering and betrayal, he learns Natalie's love was a lie orchestrated for cover. With Lily's safety at stake, Van dismantles Obsidian's empire, confronting betrayal and danger. But with Malcolm Reeves still at large, is the threat truly over? Love thrilling tales like Van's fight to protect Lily? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more gripping stories, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes insights. Your support fuels our storytelling passion. Hit that subscribe button, share with friends, and join our community to never miss an epic adventure. Bradley's laugh sliced through the din of polite conversation like a blade dipped in poison. "Why are you even here?" he sneered, his voice low but unmistakably mocking. Theodore and Diana Keller chuckled beside him, their condescension as crisp as the champagne in their fluted glasses. But before Van Mercer could respond, a small, steady hand gripped his own. "Dad," Lily whispered, her tone urgent, eyes wide with something too grave for a 7-year-old. "We need to leave. Something's wrong." The words weren't loud, but they dropped into the room like a live wire. Van didn't hesitate. He bent, looked straight into his daughter's eyes, clear, frightened, resolute, and gave the faintest nod. No one in the lake house saw it coming. Earlier that afternoon, Van had stood at the foot of his driveway, cream-colored invitation in hand, thumb brushing over the gold-embossed lettering. Natalie Mercer, 35th birthday celebration. The venue, the lake house, their lake house, now under the command of Bradley Hoffman, the man Natalie had married barely 8 months after their divorce. Lily zipped up her overnight bag without looking at him. "You don't have to go, Dad. I can tell Mom you had work." He crouched beside her, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "And Miss dropping you off?" "Never. Besides, your mom and I promised to stay civil for your sake." What he didn't say, couldn't say, was that he would gladly walk barefoot across glass just to be in her orbit. The custody arrangement was a cold, merciless clock that robbed him of time. Every other weekend and Wednesdays felt like crumbs when he wanted the whole meal. As his Audi turned down the winding drive, the lake house loomed ahead, familiar and strange all at once. The warm cedar siding he once helped stain had been bleached into cold, pristine white. Gone were the iron lanterns and Adirondack chairs. In their place, chrome fixtures and architectural minimalism. Natalie's new life in monochrome. The driveway teemed with luxury vehicles. Van recognized the sleek Lexus belonging to Theodore Keller and a few others, former friends who'd quietly aligned with Natalie post-divorce. None had picked his side. Inside, the house buzzed with celebration. Laughter echoed from the kitchen, and strings of fairy lights draped over exposed beams gave a festive glow. Natalie descended the stairs, her black dress hugging her like a second skin, golden curls cascading over her shoulders. Her smile flickered when she saw him. "Lily!" she exclaimed, opening her arms. Then, upon spotting Van, her expression cooled. "I didn't expect you to come inside." "Just dropping off the birthday girl," Van replied, keeping his tone neutral as he handed over Lily's overnight bag. "Happy birthday." Before Natalie could respond, Theodore and Diana materialized, their expressions etched in stone. Diana's perfume hit Van like a memory he didn't ask for. Behind them came Bradley, his arm already claiming Natalie's waist. "Well, well," Theodore said with a smile that never reached his eyes. "What a surprise." "Hardly a welcome one," Diana added, loud enough to sting. Bradley didn't bother with pretense. "Why are you even here?" His words dripped smug satisfaction. Behind him, laughter. The walls seemed to tighten. Van had survived ambushes in failed states, stared down warlords and corrupt officials with blood on their hands. But the icy contempt in that room hit a place none of them ever could. "I came to bring my daughter to her mother's party," Van replied evenly. Lily stepped forward, defiance burning in her small frame. "Dad's here with me." Bradley squatted to her level, his voice laced with syrup. "Sweetie, why don't you go join the other kids downstairs?" Lily didn't move. Instead, she turned to Van, her grip suddenly ironclad. "Dad, we need to leave. Now." The shift in the room was immediate. Conversations paused. The tension coalesced into something darker. Van crouched to meet her eyes and saw it. True fear, unfiltered. "I think we'll skip the party," he said, rising with calm finality. "Lily's not feeling up to it." Natalie's expression cracked. "What's wrong, honey? Are you sick?" "She's fine," Bradley interjected. Too quickly. "She just wants attention." Van felt Lily press closer to his side. Something was wrong, not theatrics. Instinct. He trusted it on foreign soil. He trusted it now. "We're leaving it," Van said. "I'll bring her back tomorrow." "You can't just change the custody schedule whenever you feel like it," Natalie protested, but her concern felt hollow, rehearsed. Theodore stepped in, chest puffed. "You don't get to waltz in and ruin Natalie's day." Then Van noticed him, a stranger near the bar, standing too still, watching too closely. He didn't belong. Not one of Natalie's wine-sipping friends. Their eyes met for the briefest moment before the man turned away. "I'll call you later," Van said, already walking Lily to the door. Once inside the car and out of the driveway's shadow, Lily leaned in. "Dad, drive fast." Van's spine tensed. "What did you hear, Lily?" Her voice trembled. "Bradley and a man with a scar. They were in the study. They said something about taking care of loose ends tonight." She hesitated. "Dad, they said your name." As Van's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, the silhouette of a black SUV filled his rearview mirror. It wasn't following recklessly, just close enough. Tracking them. Tactically. Chapter 2. Dead Drops and Revelations. Van knew the drill. He wrote the drill. The trailing vehicle used a textbook surveillance gap. He'd employed it himself during his time at Sendel's security group. Now it was being turned on him. "Lily, get down," Van said, voice calm but clipped. "Lie on the floor behind my seat and don't move unless I say it's okay." "Are the bad men following us?" she asked, sliding onto the floor. "Just being cautious," he replied, turning sharply onto a side road. The SUV followed. Confirmation. Every nerve went on high alert. He was no longer a protector for hire escorting oil executives through the jungle. He was a father, and his daughter was the mission. After 20 minutes of evasive maneuvers, he veered into an underground garage beneath an office building. Dominic Rizzo's firm had a floor here, and though Dominic was out of town, Van had a key. He killed the Audi's engine, scanned for tails, and ushered Lily through the service entrance into the darkened office suite. "Uncle Dom's not here?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. "He's in Dallas," Van answered, bypassing the security alarm and heading straight for the control console. The camera feed confirmed it. The SUV hadn't followed them inside. For now, they were safe. He crouched beside Lily, gently brushing her cheek. "Tell me everything you heard, even the small stuff." What she shared came in fragments, children's observations tinged with eerie clarity. Offshore accounts, a rushed timeline, a problem that needed removal, his name, and one more, Portia. Bradley had said Portia was asking too many questions and might talk to Van. The name hit him like a sucker punch. Portia Devo, Natalie's college roommate and closest confidant. Months ago, she'd reached out to him, nervous, cryptic, hinting there were truths behind the divorce he didn't know. They'd met once for coffee and she'd promised to send proof. She never did. Van had let it go, chalking it up to post-divorce tension. Now that felt like a fatal oversight. While Lily dozed on the leather couch, Van got to work. Bradley's clean-cut resume didn't survive scrutiny. Strange gaps in employment, phantom addresses, a digital footprint that didn't begin until 2015. Then there was Theodore Keller. 2 past federal probes into his financial dealings, both quietly dropped. Investigators reassigned or retired. By midnight, Van had only scratched the surface of a deeper rot. He needed allies, resources, a place where Lily could be safe. Then his phone lit up. Unknown number, one message. Portia Devo found dead in her apartment. Ice slicked Van Mercer's spine as he read the encrypted message. Apartment, apparent suicide. Police involved, watch yourself. His thumb hovered over the screen, heart hammering. That message hadn't come from a casual acquaintance. It was the signature of someone who once shared silent nods and coded signals across international borders. One of his old Sentinel colleagues. A whisper from the shadows that something far worse than custody battles or smug stepfathers was taking shape. He moved instantly. 3 calls, one to Renee, his steadfast sister, and Lily's unofficial guardian angel. She would take Lily someplace safe, somewhere off-grid. A second to his attorney to preempt any legal backlash with formal custody records. The third, a murmur into a secure line to a deep background investigator who owed him more than a few favors. By sunrise, Lily was nestled in a secluded mountain cabin beyond the reach of cell towers, and Van was back in his condo, a ghost in his own life. Silence cloaked the room as he opened a concealed panel in his closet, revealing the go bag he hadn't touched in years. Cash. Untraceable burner phones. The same Glock 19 he'd used during black operations that never made it to a government ledger. As he loaded the weapon with clinical precision, his phone buzzed. A voice message. Natalie. Frantic. Accusatory. "Where the hell are you with my daughter? Bradley's calling the police for kidnapping. This is insane, Van. Whatever you think you're doing." He deleted it without hesitation and powered the phone down. The rules had changed. Portia Devo had tried to warn him, and now she was dead. The suicide was a cover, crude but effective. But Van Mercer had never been one to accept someone else's script. Unlike Portia, he wasn't expendable. Not easily. And this time he had something more dangerous than intel. He had purpose. Rain clawed at the rusting panels of the abandoned waterfront warehouse like desperate fingers. The place reeked of mildew and betrayal, lit only by the distant glow of the city's jagged skyline. Van crouched in the shadows behind a stack of decaying pallets, watching the entrance. 2:37 a.m. Franklin Wells was late. That wasn't like him. They had called him Clockwork at Sentinel for a reason. The man made Swiss watches look sloppy. If he was running 20 minutes behind, there were complications. Dangerous ones. At last, the heavy door groaned open. Wells slipped inside, soaked to the bone, trench coat glistening beneath the flickering overhead light. His eyes scanned the cavernous dark before he stepped into view. "You look like hell, Mercer," Wells muttered, voice nearly lost beneath the metal roof's relentless drumming. 3 days and other people's nightmares will do that, Van replied. "Tell me you found something." Wells lowered a waterproof case between them. "I found the Devil's Ledger." A shiver passed through the room. "You were right about Bradley Hoffman. The man's a ghost. Doesn't exist before 2205. Real name, Preston Rayburn. Former financial ops for a blacklisted PMC, Obsidian Solutions Group." Van's brow twitched. "Never heard of them." "Exactly," Wells said. "They're designed to disappear. They thrive in the gaps between military operations and corporate espionage, illegal as hell, Les. But highly lucrative. And your ex-father-in-law? Theodore Keller? He's the one laundering their blood money through Heritage Trust." The puzzle pieces began aligning in Van's mind, snapping into a shape that reeked of betrayal. "And Natalie?" Wells hesitated. "That's where it gets murky. Either she's a pawn or she's all in. I couldn't tell, but she's tangled deep." He tapped to the case. "Everything's in there. Transaction logs, shell company identities, account trails, enough to sink them all. And Portia, she was ruled a suicide yesterday. Unofficially, the ME flagged defensive wounds. Someone made it look like suicide." Van's jaw clenched. He'd known it the moment Portia went dark. She died trying to get him this truth. "There's more," Wells said grimly. "Obsidian's cleaning house. Money's being shuffled offshore. New IDs, fresh passports. They're prepping to vanish." Van's voice was low, cold. "With my daughter." Wells nodded. "One of the passport apps? It's for a minor female. Name doesn't match Lily, but the birthday does. There's a private jet charter booked 3 days from now. See Paulo? Then off the grid." "You need to take this to the FBI," Wells urged, desperation creeping into his tone. "This is bigger than a custody fight. These people have contracts, cover stories, deep ties to intelligence networks. They've erased people before. If Lily becomes a liability—" "How long would the investigation take?" Van interrupted, his tone like a blade. Wells exhaled slowly, recognizing the steel in his old friend's eyes. "Years." "Exactly," Van said. "By then she's gone." Wells paused. "What's your play?" Van cracked the case open. The air felt heavier with the secrets inside. I dismantle their operation, piece by piece, starting now. Among the files, a face leapt out. A scarred man, the same Lily had described after that strange encounter near the school. Malcolm Reeves, head of security for Obsidian, ex-special forces, a ghost hunter who erased problems instead of solving them. One last thing, Wells said, handing him a flash drive. Security cam footage from Portia's apartment building the night she died. Took some work to get. The screen showed Reeves entering the building at 11:42 p.m., leaving at 12:17. Portia's estimated time of death, 11:30 to 12:30. Van pocketed the drive. Disappear, Franklin. Go to New Zealand. Take that vacation. Already booked, Wells said, then hesitated. Natalie, she's not the woman you married. Either she's been wearing a mask all this time, or they remade her. Van nodded, though the ache that should have followed never came. The Natalie he'd loved, if she ever existed, was gone. What remained was a stranger wrapped in a familiar face. Thank you, Van said quietly. Wells vanished into the rain. Alone, Van combed through the evidence, cold calculation eclipsing grief. The web spread across 5 nations. Obsidian was laundering cartel money through Keller's institutions while using their security front to do unspeakable things in war zones no one watched. But what froze Van's blood wasn't the money. It was the folder labeled leverage. Surveillance photos of Lily, at the park, at school, standing on the balcony of his condo. They'd been watching her, tracking her, planning to use her. Then as dawn cracked the horizon, Vanna Mercer made a vow, not to the law, not to justice, to his daughter. The people who threatened her wouldn't find themselves in a courtroom. They'd find him, and he would not be swift. He would not be merciful. By midday, the storm of vengeance was gathering speed. Van had made the calls. Shadows from his past answered. Operatives in 6 time zones stirred from silence. Favors were being called in, alliances reawakened. This wasn't a grieving father lashing out. This was an architect laying foundations for war. The first blow would fall that night. The Oakmont Country Club gleamed under golden chandeliers as the city's elite paraded through its annual charity gala. In the cigar lounge, Theodore Keller lounged with 3 other men, his voice marinated in 12-year-old scotch in entitlement. The Shanghai deal finalizes next week, he drawled, $30 million moving through the Cayman account. Scott Levinson, the compliance officer for Heritage Trust, looked uneasy. Federal Banking Commission inquiries are intensifying. They're asking questions, specific ones. They always ask, Keller scoffed. That's why we keep Senator Wilmington's consulting fees paid. At the bar, Van Mercer sipped bourbon, watching it all unfold through the mirror's reflection. A device in his jacket pocket recorded every damning word. Then the bartender set another glass before him. Compliments of the gentleman at the end. Van turned. Malcolm Reeves, scarred, cold, calculating. Their eyes met, predator to predator. A silent promise passed between them. Van stood and crossed the floor, picking up the drink. Bold move, approaching me in public, he said. Professional courtesy, Reeves replied, cool as frost. One operator to another. I've seen your file. Tehran, Bogota. I'm retired. No one like you ever really retires, Mr. Mercer, Reeves had said. We just changed targets. The sharp clink of crystal broke the low hum of the bar as Malcolm Reeves swirled his whiskey, eyes fixed on Van Mercer with a predator's calm. You've been digging where you shouldn't, Reeves said coolly, accessing systems far outside your clearance, asking questions about matters that don't concern you. Van's gaze didn't flinch. Someone put surveillance on my daughter. That makes it my concern. Reeves didn't even blink. Insurance. Nothing more. Your ex-wife's of great interest to certain parties. By extension, so is the child. You murdered Portia Devo. A regrettable but necessary decision, Reeves replied with icy indifference. She became unstable. He leaned forward, the air between them crackling with veiled menace. This is a courtesy, one professional to another. Stand down. Whatever damning evidence you think you have gathered, whoever you believe is backing you, it won't matter. The people I serve operate beyond consequence. Van's face was unreadable. Did you tell Portia that before you made her death look like suicide? Something unspoken sparked behind Reeves's eyes, sharp and vicious. His lips curled into a mock smile. Your daughter looks content with her mother and her new stepfather. It would be unfortunate if her world were disrupted. Van's voice turned to ice. You threaten my daughter again, and there won't be enough left of you to identify. Reeves scoffed, arrogance bristling. Brave words considering the odds. Outmatched, outnumbered. He tossed a few bills on the counter and stood. This is your only warning, Mercer. Oh, Mercer. Next time, it won't be a conversation. He vanished into the night, leaving behind the faint scent of cologne and contempt. Van remained. 20 minutes passed before he moved, eyes fixed on the group across the room. Theodore Keller, patriarch and puppet master, finally rose and excused himself toward the restroom. Van followed. The opulence of the marble-tiled washroom clashed with the sudden tension. Theodore froze, catching Van's reflection in the mirror, an apparition of reckoning. What the hell are you doing here? He demanded, turning. Van's voice was composed, sharpened by fury held in check. I know about Obsidian, I know about the money laundering through Heritage Trust, and I know you're planning to vanish with Natalie and my daughter. The blood drained from Theodore's face, but he recovered quickly, face hardening. You have no idea what you're talking about. Portia tried to warn me, Van pressed. You silenced her. I didn't. Theodore stopped mid-lie, realizing the futility. Even if you knew something, you couldn't prove it. And if you could, you'd have brought the feds. You're alone. I'm not looking for justice in a courtroom, Van said quietly. I'm offering it personally. A tremor flickered through Theodore's bravado. Are you threatening me? No, Van replied. I'm making a promise. If you take Lily out of this country, I will dismantle everything you've built, brick by brick. I'll ruin everyone you care about. They'll watch as your empire burns. For a moment, Theodore stared, then gave a cruel, almost pitying laugh. Still so naive. You really thought she loved you? Natalie married you on my orders. You were a cover. Clean record, deep ties, no encumbrances. You made us look legitimate while we expanded. That was your function. Van didn't blink. Theodore adjusted his tie, his voice laced with condescension. And Lily? A mistake. Natalie was never supposed to have children. But she got sentimental. He moved to leave, but Van stepped forward, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. One more thing. Van raised his phone. The screen displayed a live recording. Theodore's voice clearly audible, discussing the Shanghai deal and Senator Wilmington. It's already been backed up to 3 secure locations. If anything happens to me or Lily, that recording hits the FBI, Interpol, and every major media outlet simultaneously. Theodore's face twisted in fury. You're playing a dangerous game. No, Van said coldly. I'm ending one. Hours later, in a modest office inside the glass spire of Heritage Trust, Compliance Officer Scott Levinson opened a thick envelope postmarked with no return address. Inside, damning documentation, accounting trails, internal memos, wire transfers, evidence so overwhelming it left no room for denial. By morning, it was on the desk of the Federal Banking Commission, the first domino falling in Van's intricate plan. Elsewhere, high above the city, Malcolm Reeves stepped into his bathroom only to freeze. His personal server had been breached. Every file copied, erased, offshore accounts drained, and there, scrawled across his mirror in white shaving foam, first warning. The game had shifted. Sunlight pierced the blinds of the safe house like sharp needles as Van scanned the latest reports. Heritage Trust was in turmoil. The commission had raided the building just after dawn. Theodore Keller had been let out in handcuffs, surrounded by stunned employees. His bail would take hours, possibly days. Van's burner phone buzzed. A message from his sister Renee. Lily, safe, no tales, she misses you. Relief pulsed through his chest, brief and bittersweet. There was no time to rest. With Theodore in custody, Obsidian would escalate their escape. Van had to move faster. The news droned behind him. A reporter stood before Heritage Trust's headquarters, voice solemn. Allegations of international laundering, securities fraud, and ties to foreign arms contractors. His primary phone buzzes, a device he left off except during brief, encrypted check-ins. 17 missed calls from Natalie, 3 from Bradley, A voicemail from his attorney. Van played it. Van, they've filed for emergency custody, alleging abduction. Judge Hansum granted a temporary order. You need to produce Lily or face criminal charges. Call me immediately. Then Natalie's message followed, her voice silky and unnatural. Van, please. We're trying to do what's best for Lily. Whatever you think is happening, you're mistaken. Come home. Let's talk before this spirals further. But the facade had cracked. Her calm, her words. It was all artifice. The woman he loved, the mother of his child, had never truly existed. She was a mask, tailored to exploit him. A knock at the door, 3 sharp taps, a pause, then 2 more. Van peered through the peephole, then opened the door to Gabriella Aosta, former intel analyst, now PI, and one of his few remaining allies. You look like hell, she said, setting her laptop on the table. Sleeps for the boring, Van muttered. What did you find? Gabriella pulled up her files. Natalie's been busy. In the last 2 days, she liquidated over $2 million. Washed it through multiple shell core. Last transfer went to the Caymans, to Blue Horizon Ventures. Obsidian's offshore front, Van said. Exactly. They're prepping for exfiltration. And Bradley, Preston Rayburn, whatever name he's using, has been calling a private airfield. Departure bumped up, tomorrow night. Van's jaw tightened. They're accelerating. And there's more, Gabriella said grimly. She tapped her screen, revealing images of hard-eyed men in military fatigues. Reeves contacted them before disappearing. Former Obsidian muscle, all of them. Van didn't need to ask. Kill team. They're already in the city. He exhaled, the weight growing. Reeves alone was lethal. With trained assassins in tow, they'd come to finish the job. Gabriella opened another file. I got into Bradley's secure server. Emails, 7 years worth, between him and Theodore. They've been planning this for a long time. Van scanned the exchanges. Cold strategy, surgical cruelty. And then, one message stood out. Mercer's background is ideal. No family, total career focus. Once Natalie secures emotional leverage, he'll be easy to control. Marriage duration, 3 to 5 years for full cover. He stared at the screen, his silence heavy with fury. Everything, his love, his marriage, the family he thought he had been an elaborate con. But the game had changed. They had made one crucial miscalculation. They underestimated the man who would burn the world to protect his daughter. Panic rippled just beneath the surface of his calm expression as Van Mercer stared at the damning document in Gabriella Aosta's hands. Her voice was low, deliberate. It gets worse, she murmured, sliding the page across to him. Contingency protocols for asset removal, if you became a liability. They were ready to erase you from the beginning. The final threads knotted into place. His life, his marriage, his years with Natalie, all of it had been a masterful fabrication. A family. Only one truth had emerged from the wreckage. Lily, their daughter. Yet even she, precious and pure, had been calculated as an unfortunate variable rather than a child born of love. Gabriella's eyes searched his. What now? Van shut the laptop with a quiet finality. I need to see her. Face to face, Gabriella's breath caught. That's suicide, with Malcolm Reeves still tracking you? I'm counting on it, Van said coolly. Give me everything on the private airfield. I want security blueprints, flight manifests, personnel rotations, and I need eyes on Bradley. If he so much as takes a breath in the wrong direction, I want to know. Once Gabriella slipped into the shadows of the night, Van readied himself for the storm he intended to walk into. He stripped and cleaned his weapon with calm precision, checked and rechecked his gear, then ran through the intelligence again like a conductor rehearsing before the crescendo. The trap had been baited. Now it was time to spring it. He took a burner phone and sent a single text to Natalie. We need to talk, alone, about Lily's future. Westlake Park, Fountain, 3 p.m. 5 p.m. Come alone or I send everything to federal prosecutors. Her reply came fast. I'll be there. He knew she wouldn't come alone. Bradley would see to that, likely flanked by Reeves' best men. They'd view this as a golden chance, to kill him, to reclaim control over Lily, to vanish before the house of cards collapsed. And that's exactly what Van wanted. At 2:45 p.m., Van Mercer emerged into the sunlit hum of Westlake Park. He blended into the flow of joggers and strollers, eyes scanning the crowd. He'd arrived 90 minutes earlier, long enough to scope out their setup and plant contingencies. From the shadows, he spotted the signs. Two men in casual wear loitering near the north and east entrances, too still, too focused. Another sat reading a newspaper with deliberate calm, eyes flicking every few seconds to the fountain. Natalie was already there, perched on a bench, her blonde hair aglow under the sun, sunglasses hiding the war behind her eyes. She looked composed, elegant, dangerous. Van approached from behind. She stiffened, sensing him. "Hello, Natalie," he said, sliding onto the bench. "Or should I call you by your operational name? Siren, wasn't it? From the Odysseus files?" She pulled her sunglasses off with calculated poise. Her eyes, once warm, once his, were now shards of ice. "You've been busy. So have you. Asset liquidation, new identities, private transport lined up." "It's not what you think," she said softly, slipping into the nurturing tone she'd perfected over the years. "Theodore's been involved in questionable dealings. Bradley and I only recently found out. We're trying to protect Lily." "Stop lying," Van said, his voice stripped of emotion. "I know about Obsidian. I know your assignment. You were never my wife. You were an operative, placed in my life for cover." Her mask faltered. Surprise, real surprise, flickered through her expression, before resolve snapped it back into place. "Fine. You want the truth?" she said. "Lily wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't supposed to get pregnant, but when it happened," her voice cracked ever so slightly, "she changed things." "But not enough," Van replied. "You still used her as leverage. We do what's necessary to survive." "Where is she?" "Safe," Van said coldly. "Somewhere you'll never reach." Natalie's eyes narrowed. "Reeves will find her. He always does." "He's otherwise occupied," Van said, nodding toward the north entrance. Police officers were moving in on the lookout. Anonymous tip about a man with a concealed weapon. Same at the east entrance. Natalie's expression broke. First confusion, then panic. "You flipped the trap," she whispered. "You should tell Bradley something," Van said, rising to his feet. "Tell him I'm coming." "You'll die," she called after him. "You can't protect Lily if you're dead." Van didn't look back. Phase 2 was already in motion. The airfield gleamed beneath rows of cold security lights. This wasn't the sleepy terminal of private jets and casual business trips. This was a fortress. Van watched from the tree line, eyes calculating. 6 men patrolled the perimeter. Military-grade weapons in hand, movements precise and disciplined. Obsidian, no question. "Incoming sweep, 30 seconds." Gabriella's voice crackled in his ear. Van slipped deeper into the foliage as 2 guards passed within meters. Their conversation drifted toward him on the breeze. Triple security details since Keller vanished. "Rayburn's losing it. Can you blame him? Someone dismantled the whole operation in 72 hours. You think it's really the ex-husband? Whoever it is, they're terrifying." Van moved as soon as they were gone, edging closer to the hangar. A sleek Gulfstream G650 sat on the tarmac, its engines in pre-flight warm-up. Gabriella's intel had pegged a 2 a.m. departure, destination Sao Paulo, with a blacked-out second leg. "I have visual," Gabriella murmured. "Bradley and Natalie just arrived. 2-car convoy, heavily armed escort." "Reeves?" "Negative. But there are at least 8 armed inside the hangar. They're expecting a siege." "They're not getting one." Van made his way toward the administrative building, light security. All focus was on the jet. Inside, he moved like a ghost, reaching the communications room undetected. A single technician sat before a bank of monitors. One nerve strike. The man crumpled, unconscious. Van locked the door and accessed the system. Within minutes, he had full control. Comms, security feeds, fuel controls. His fingers moved swiftly, disabling external coordination, rerouting camera feeds, initiating silent alerts. "All assets in position," Gabriella confirmed. "Go dark until exfil," Van replied. The facility began to fracture. Communication blackouts, false intrusion alerts, redirected patrols. On screen, he watched Bradley and Natalie being pulled toward the jet, flanked by security. Bradley was frantic, his movements erratic. Natalie scanned her surroundings like a seasoned soldier, calm but coiled. Then, over the horizon, thunder. Federal helicopters sliced through the night, their floodlights bathing the tarmac in stark white beams. The panic was instant. Obsidian operatives scrambled. Orders screamed over radios. Bradley and Natalie were yanked away from the stairs and shoved back toward the convoy. And Van, watching from the shadows, allowed himself the faintest of smiles. The game wasn't over. But now it was finally being played on his terms. Gunfire cracked in the distance like bones splintering beneath pressure. But Natalie Mercer didn't flinch. Her gaze was locked on the shadow gliding toward the hangar, silent and deliberate, an intruder no one else had spotted. She broke formation, slipping free of her escort like a ghost peeling off into the dark. Her fingers found the grip of her concealed pistol beneath her jacket, and the weapon emerged with quiet intent. She followed. Inside the hangar, dim and cavernous, Van Mercer moved with ruthless efficiency. The air was thick with fuel vapor and unspoken consequences. He crouched near the reserve tanks, planting precise charges. No fireworks, just surgical disruption. Enough to ground every aircraft indefinitely. South America would have to wait. Forever. I should have known. Natalie's voice came from behind, sharp as cut glass. They all underestimated you. I warned them. Van straightened slowly, turning to face the woman who had once been his wife. The 9mm she held was unwavering, trained dead center on his chest. You were always the smartest one, he said, his voice low, tinged with reluctant admiration. This won't end well for you, she replied, keeping her distance. Even if you bring down Obsidian, others will rise in its place. The people who protected Theodore all these years, they'll just find new monsters to feed. Maybe, Van allowed, but none of them will have my daughter. For a fraction of a second, something in Natalie faltered. The agent's mask cracked, revealing a flicker of something raw and unguarded. Love. Real, aching love. I do love her, Van. Whatever else I've done, that was never a lie. And yet, he said, stepping forward slightly, you were going to take her away, raise her in a pit of vipers. I was protecting her, Natalie snapped, her voice rising with old fury. You have no idea what these people are capable of. I understand perfectly, Van replied. That's why I've spent the last 72 hours gutting their network. Bank accounts frozen, identities stripped bare, safe houses compromised. By morning, there won't be a trace of Obsidian or its architects. A pulse of fear crossed Natalie's face, genuine and deep. You couldn't have gotten everyone. Obsidian is too vast. I didn't need to, Van said with grim finality. I just had to light the right match. Chaos does the rest. They're turning on each other already. Your father gave up Bradley in exchange for witness protection. She blinked, stunned. And Bradley, Van continued, the files I fed to the FBI will keep him locked away in a concrete box until the world forgets his name. Gunfire flared again outside, louder this time. Federal agents closing in. It's over, Natalie, Van said. The only question is whether you get arrested as an accomplice or eliminated as a loose end. Her eyes flicked toward the shadows, calculation battling fear. There's always another way out, she said slowly. Shoot you, disappear in the chaos. It won't work, Van warned. This conversation's being broadcast to federal receivers. You kill me, and you'll never see Lily again. That name, Lily, drove a tremor through Natalie's hands. Her gun wavered. Where is she? Is she really safe? Safer than she ever was with you. The last words broke her. The operative dissolved, leaving behind only a mother drowning in regret. I never wanted this for her. You have to believe that, she said, her voice splintering. They told me to get close to you, to build a cover. It was just another job. I never expected to have a child, Van said, finishing what she couldn't, to build something real. Natalie nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Theodore owned me since I was 17. After my mother died, he pulled me into his world, one lie at a time. By the time I understood the truth, it was already too late. I was neck-deep in operations I couldn't walk away from. The gunfire drew nearer, the firefight collapsing toward the hangar. "You have one chance," Van said, his tone hardened, stripped of sentiment. "Put down the gun, turn yourself in, help dismantle what's left, and I'll make sure Lily knows you tried to do the right thing." The weapon trembled in her grip. Her shoulders sagged beneath the weight of every choice she'd made. "They'll kill me in custody. Make it look like suicide, just like Portia." "Not if you have leverage," Van countered, producing a small flash drive from his pocket. "Names, dates, offshore accounts. The ones who really ran Obsidian, Theodore, Bradley, the unseen hierarchy. Enough insurance to keep you alive." A fragile flicker of hope glinted in her eyes. "You'd do that? After everything?" "Not for you," Van said, unflinching. "For Lily, so she'll know her mother wasn't beyond redemption." The hangar doors burst open, the thunder of boots and shouted commands echoing through the chamber. Federal agents poured in, weapons raised, eyes hard. Natalie glanced at them, then back at Van. Slowly, wordlessly, she bent to the floor and laid down her weapon. As the agents moved in, she looked to Van one last time. "Tell Lily I'm sorry. Tell her," her voice cracked, "tell her I loved her." That was never a lie. Van watched in silence as they took her away, her last words ringing in his ears like bells tolling for the dead. Outside, Bradley, Preston Robburn, was already in shackles, his face a twisted mask of fury as he was loaded into a transport vehicle. The empire he'd helped build, an edifice of deceit that had fractured Van's marriage and endangered his daughter, was crumbling, ish falling from its bones. Yet victory felt like ruin. In protecting Lily, Van had destroyed the illusion of her world. A mother exposed as a spy, a grandfather revealed as a criminal, a stepfather as a sociopath. The truth, though necessary, would scar her forever. As the first light of dawn spilled over the tarmac, Van stood alone amid the wreckage. The war was not over, only transformed. His next battle would be fought not with weapons, but with compassion and resolve, to rebuild what was shattered for his daughter. And somewhere, unseen, Malcolm Reeves had slipped through the case. The final predator, no longer hunting on orders, but out of vengeance. The game had changed. It was far from over. Lily's delighted shrieks pierced the golden hush of afternoon as she dashed across the sun-warmed lawn, the puppy bounding behind her in chaotic joy. Her laughter was a balm, a melody that momentarily pushed back the weight of the past. Renee lingered nearby, watching her niece twirl in the grass before turning to her brother with a smile that was part amusement, part gentle admonishment. "You're spoiling her," she remarked, her voice free of judgment. Van Mercer's eyes didn't leave his daughter. "She deserves to feel something other than fear," he said quietly. "After what she's been through, this is what healing looks like." The dog skidded to a halt, and Lily immediately coaxed it to sit, offering it praise like a tiny drill sergeant in pigtails. Renee folded her arms, brow lifting slightly. "How's the new place?" "Final security systems go in tomorrow. After that, we're ready." His tone was practical, but his jaw remained tight. "You really think Reeves will come for you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Van's reply was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of inevitability. "Not if, when?" His gaze darkened. "I've turned the house into a fortress. Panic rooms, escape tunnels, full-spectrum surveillance. If he tries anything, he won't get within 50 yards before we know." "And Lily?" Renee pressed gently. "How much does she really understand?" "She knows her mother made mistakes, that she's helping the authorities now. She knows Bradley wasn't who he said he was." His voice caught, briefly. "The rest we'll leave for when she's older." Just then, Lily bolted toward them, face flushed, beaming. "Look, he already knows how to sit." They both turned to watch as the puppy performed its trick and again with exuberant clumsiness. As Lily ran off, Renee glanced at her brother, her expression softening. "And Natalie?" she asked. "Will Lily ever see her again?" Van's voice was careful now. "That's up to the federal marshals, and one day it'll be Lily's choice." Later that evening, with Lily safely tucked into bed at Renee's home, Van drove alone to the new house. The structure loomed on its hill like a citadel, concrete, glass, steel, all sharp edges and clean lines designed as much for defense as for living. The moment he crossed the threshold, the house's security system pulsed to life. One alert flashed red, perimeter breach. His breath caught. Then he checked the feed. A deer, just a deer, slipping through the woods at the back of the property. Still, he swept the rooms one by one, muscle memory guiding him. No sign of entry, yet the sensation prickled at the base of his neck, the unmistakable chill of eyes unseen. In his line of work, instinct and paranoia were twins, and only one of them kept you alive. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. She has her eyes. Central Park Playground. Yellow jacket. Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. Attached, a photo of Lily, at school, taken that very morning. His blood turned to ice. He called his surveillance team instantly, voice clipped with fury. How the hell did someone get close enough for this shot? They scrambled for answers. Nothing, no breach. The perimeter was intact. He didn't need confirmation. Only one man could do this. Malcolm Reeves. I can reach her any time. It wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of power. Van weighed his choices. He could go to the feds, let them take over, bury Lily in protection, vanish her again. But Reeves wouldn't be caught that way. He'd go deeper underground, harder to reach, still lethal. No, this needed to end. On his terms, but executed on Van's. The next 3 days passed in a storm of preparation. Lily and Renee vanished into a safe house even his most trusted allies didn't know. Surveillance teams, loyal, vetted, and elite, positioned themselves around Central Park, invisible and ready. Every tree, every bench, every shadow became a potential vector of threat. Every angle was measured, every contingency rehearsed. Tuesday came. Van approached from an unanticipated direction, appearance subtly altered. Hair, posture, clothing, all changed enough to avoid immediate recognition. From his vantage point, he spotted the yellow jacket. A man sat alone on a bench facing the playground. Wrong build, wrong gait, not Reeves, a surrogate. Through his earpiece, confirmation came. No weapons, just a phone, and an envelope. Van approached, sat beside him, heart steady, eyes scanning. He said you'd come, the man muttered, not turning. Said you wouldn't risk your daughter. Where is he? Van asked. Not here. He said to give you this. The man slid the envelope over. Said it explains everything. Van's finger stopped short of touching it. A whisper of instinct screamed no. He yanked his hand back just as the man's arm jerked toward his coat pocket. Too fast. Van reacted in a blink, knocking the man's arm sideways. But instead of a gun, the man pulled a syringe, and the blow drove the needle into his own thigh. His eyes went wide. He said, it wouldn't hurt you, just make you sleep. Then he collapsed, convulsing violently. Screams erupted as parents scrambled for their children, chaos breaking like a wave across the playground. Van's team descended, locking down the area. The man's body twitched, then stilled, dead before answers could be drawn. No fingerprints, no name, just a corpse with a message. Inside the envelope, one photo. Natalie, in her secure location. Yesterday's newspaper in hand. Scrawled across the image, she's next, then you. Then Lily will be alone, just like you were. Van's breath caught, just like you were. Reeves had dug deep, too deep. He knew Van's past, his childhood, the orphanage, the loneliness. This wasn't just about revenge. This was dismantling, layer by layer, heart first, then blood, then bone. As agents took over the scene, Van stepped away. Dialed Sophia Mendez. He's compromised Natalie. Move her, full protocol. How? That location? He has someone inside your walls. Witness security is bleeding. Don't trust anyone until you find the leak. He ended the call before she could answer. Enough. He would not wait for Reeves' next move. He would be the next move. The rules had changed. The hunter had become the hunted. Lightning split the sky in jagged veins of silver, momentarily revealing Van Mercer's silhouette as he clung to the rusted fire escape. The iron groaned beneath him, each step a treacherous gamble against time and gravity. Rain lashed the side of the building, drowning most sounds. But that flare of light could have exposed him. He froze, breath held tight in his chest. No movement, no alarm. He climbed the last rung and crouched on the rooftop, hard hammering as he scanned for hostiles. The storm cloaked his approach, but still he moved like a shadow, methodical, unseen. At the hatch, he ran gloved fingers along its edges, checking for tripwires or pressure triggers. Clean. He eased it open, descending into a cavern of darkness so complete it swallowed all light. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and rot. Ceilings sagged with water damage. Collapsed panels lay like corpses across the debris-strewn floor. Van switched on his night vision and advanced through the broken skeleton of what had once been a corporate office. Below, voices stirred the silence, muffled, indistinct, but enough to catch his attention. He paused above a ceiling vent, crouching silently. From this perch, he had both visual and auditory advantage. Through the slats, he glimpsed two figures and caught fragments of conversation. The leak was contained, not Reeves himself, one of his lieutenants. Marshals moved the woman again. "We've lost the trail." Reeves's voice followed, unmistakably cold, precise. "It doesn't matter. Mercer is the priority. Once he's eliminated, the woman and child can be located at our convenience. The Belgrade team lands tomorrow. 6 fully equipped operators. We move ahead." A beat of silence. Then the subordinate again. "You think Mercer's found this place?" "It's possible. Enhance surveillance. Activate secondary protocols." Van's jaw clenched. They were accelerating. More mercenaries, tighter security. His window to act was rapidly closing. He crept forward along the joists, his every movement a masterclass in stealth. Beneath him stretched what resembled a makeshift command center. Laptops humming, weapons arrayed in methodical order, and Reeves, sharp-eyed and unreadable, studying a monitor. Nearby, his subordinate monitored surveillance feeds with practiced efficiency. Van weighed the odds. A frontal assault was suicide, especially with Reeves likely having escape contingencies. But delay meant facing a well-fortified enemy later. Before he could decide, fate intervened. An alarm shrieked from the console. "Perimeter breach. South quadrant," the subordinate reported, his hand flying to his sidearm. "Thermal shows one intruder." On screen, a figure darted through the facility, a decoy from Van's team, right on time. "Chris, investigate. Keep me updated," Reeves ordered. "Could be a scavenger or something worse." As Chris exited, Van moved into position. Alone now, Reeves began toggling additional defenses, his attention divided, just as planned. The ceiling above gave way with a controlled crash. Van dropped like judgment incarnate, landing in a crouch, weapon raised. Reeves didn't flinch. He raised his hand slowly, his voice even. "Calculated risk. You walk straight into the lion's den." "End of the line, Reeves," Van said, stepping forward, gun steady. "Your operation's blown. Federal TAC teams are inbound." "Are they?" Reeves asked, with a faint, sardonic smile. "Or are you here alone, driven by vengeance, not orders? The Van Mercer I studied wouldn't risk his daughter's safety on a personal vendetta." "That Van Mercer is gone," he snapped. "You and Obsidian made sure of that when you dismantled my life and targeted my child." Reeves gave a faint shrug. "Collateral damage. Nothing personal until you made it so." "Sending assassins after Lily made it personal." "Insurance," Reeves corrected, calm as ever. "A tactic you'd use in my position. We're not so different, you and I, both trained to neutralize threats with maximum efficiency." Van's voice dropped into a low snarl. "The difference is, I don't target children." Silence crackled between them, the only sound the alarm's distant pulse. "What's your endgame, Mercer?" Reeves asked. "Shoot me? Hand me over? Neither solves your problem. Others will continue what I began. You're a liability to them. Your knowledge alone ensures they'll never stop." "I've dismantled Obsidian," Van replied. "Your leaders are either indicted or hiding under witness protection. Your accounts are frozen. You've got nothing left to protect." For the first time, something faltered in Reeves' icy mask. His lips twitched, more grimace than smile. "There's always something left. Always one last loose end." The radio crackled. No sign of the intruder. Could have been wildlife. Continuing sweep. Reeves's eyes flicked, barely perceptible, toward the desk. Van clocked the movement instantly. Years of survival had honed his instincts to a razor's edge. "Hands on your head," he ordered, circling wide. "Now!" Facing away from the desk, Reeves complied, slow, deliberate. "You're making a mistake," he said. "I'm offering you a way out, for you and your daughter, a permanent resolution." "The only resolution," Van replied, zip-tying Reeves's wrist with unflinching precision, "is removing you from the equation." Secured, Reeves posed no immediate threat, but Van advanced cautiously toward the desk, weapon raised. What he found stopped him cold. Photographs. High resolution. Recent. Lily at her new school. At Renee's house. Even at the off-grid safe house he'd fortified with every resource he had. Accompanying them were detailed blueprints, complete with annotated security vulnerabilities and entry routes. His voice was barely contained fury. "How did you get these?" Reeves met his gaze with chilling composure. "Professional courtesy, a demonstration. Those photos were taken this morning. Your security has already been breached. My team has protocols in place. Waiting." Van's stomach dropped. "What protocols?" "A dead man's switch," Reeves replied. "Standard precaution. If I'm killed or detained and fail to check in at scheduled intervals, automated systems activate. Your daughter's location becomes a target." Ice flowed through Van's veins. Reeves wasn't bluffing. This was classic tradecraft. "What do you want?" Van asked, though he already knew. "Professional resolution," Reeves repeated. "You disappear. No pursuit. No more digging into Obsidian. In return, your daughter lives, unharmed. And I'm supposed to trust you?" "Not me. Operational logic. She's no longer a threat if you vanish. Killing her serves no purpose. My clients aren't monsters. They're strategists." Before Van could reply, a thunderous explosion rocked the building. South perimeter. His team. Right on cue. Reeves remained perfectly still. "We have limited time now. The offer stands. Your life, for hers, but not for long." In the flickering red of emergency lights, Van studied him. A man of ice and calculation, Reeves rarely lied. Because he didn't need to, but something in his eyes felt too staged, too confident. "Show me the dead man's switch," Van said. "Now, prove it exists." Reeves nodded toward a laptop on a nearby table. "Theta 97, folder, automated protocols." Guns still trained on him, Van entered the code. The system opened. What he saw chilled him. Sophisticated scripts, time-based execution parameters, fail-safe triggers, target coordinates, Lily's sanctuary. Reeves had been telling the truth. The moment Van walked in here, the rules had changed, and every second mattered now. The alert blinked red across the screen, an unscheduled deviation in Bradley Hoffman's federal transport route. Van Mercer's fingers stilled on the laptop. Outside, the wind rustled through the maple leaves like a whisper of warning. Autumn's dying breath brushing against the windows of the home he'd forged from necessity and love. Inside, the world was quiet, Lily already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening, grounding himself in that fragile calm before the storm. Then he moved. His hand reached automatically for the encrypted satellite phone, keying in a secure line to one of his remaining off-book contacts in the Marshal Service. "Confirm current coordinates of the Hoffman transport," Van said, his voice low, clipped. There was a pause on the other end. Then quietly, "They're off route. Someone rerouted the escort team through an unmapped corridor." Orders appeared legitimate. Federal clearance code, level 6. "We're still tracking, but it's clean. Too clean." A cold weight settled in Van's gut. This isn't a bureaucratic error. "No, sir, this is extraction or assassination." He ended the call, his jaw tight. The predator was shifting again, this time behind bars with invisible hands pulling strings that should have long since been severed. Bradley Hoffman, alias Preston Rayburn, was supposed to rot beneath the weight of consecutive life sentences. Yet here he was, not only alive, but active, reaching. Van moved through the house with the silent precision of a man who had spent his life operating in the shadows. In the master closet behind a false panel lay a locked case. He keyed in the biometric scan and opened it, revealing a compact but lethal arsenal. A sidearm, encrypted drives, burner IDs, and a single folded photograph. Lily, beaming on a lakeside dock, the sun tangled in her hair. He touched the edge of the photo before securing it in his jacket. Downstairs, the secure laptop blinked again. The screen now split with a satellite image of the transport van veering onto a service road near the outskirts of Toledo. No escort vehicles in sight. The road ended in woods. No cameras, no signals, no return. Van typed a rapid sequence, forwarding the feed to Gabriela Aosta's private server. She was already pinging him before he could reach for the phone. "Tell me you're seeing this," she said without preamble. "I'm already moving," Van replied. "Wake Franklin. Trace any Obsidian sleeper assets within 500 miles of that road." "I'll coordinate with Dominic," Gabriella said. "And Van." "I know," he interrupted. "If they're trying to pull Hoffman out, then this isn't over. And if it isn't over, Lily's not safe." She didn't have to say anything. They both knew what it meant. There were no coincidences in a world built on secrets. By the time the call ended, Van had changed into tactical black. The sound of Lily's laughter from earlier replayed in his mind like a fragile song at the edge of war. He paused only once more outside her door. She stirred slightly in her sleep, murmuring something about her science project. He leaned in and brushed her hair from her forehead, whispering, "I'll keep you safe, always." Then he was gone. Out in the night, the northern Michigan air bit like steel. The SUV, rigged with clone plates and customized for low-profile evasion, purred to life beneath his hands. As he pulled out onto the darkened road, a storm gathered low over the horizon, clouds curling like fists. The forest blurred past his windows in streaks of crimson and gold, a burning canvas painted by nature's last stand before winter. Van Mercer had hoped the hunt was finished. He was wrong. The game had changed, but the rules he knew by heart. And this time, there would be no pieces left standing. The black SUV veered sharply off the designated route, its tires kicking up gravel as it slipped onto a desolate back road that cut through fields and thickets like a scar. In his secure office, Van Mercer's pulse quickened. Without hesitation, he activated enhanced tracking protocols. The digital map flared to life, a pulsing blue dot drifting steadily into the countryside, far from the sanctioned path to the courthouse. This wasn't a minor detour. It was a complete abandonment of protocol. Van's fingers flew across his console. He dialed a trusted contact within the U.S. Marshal's Service, his voice clipped and controlled. "We've got a problem," he said. Confirmation came swiftly and grimly. No route change had been approved. The transport was no longer answering hails. Silence stretched across the comms like a noose. Van stared at the screen, eyes narrowing, as the vehicle stopped in a remote forested corridor. For 17 agonizing minutes, it remained motionless, dead calm. Then, abruptly, it surged to life again, moving fast. Too fast, and in the wrong direction. An hour later, the confirmation crackled through emergency channels. A federal prisoner transport had been ambushed. 2 marshals down, no survivors. The prisoner, Preston Rayburn, formerly known as Bradley Hoffman, vanished. Van's security systems responded like muscle memory. His estate sealed itself in stages, perimeter sensors armed, drones launched from their charging nests like silent hawks, extraction vehicles readied in shadowed garages. His fingers moved with measured precision, locking down everything that could be locked. But even amidst this calculated orchestration, Van knew the truth. This wasn't about him. Not directly. Not yet. Bradley was a liability to Obsidian, had been too close to the core, too embedded in operations layered with black money and blood. If he talked, he could bury them all. His disappearance was no rescue. It was containment. Still, Van prepared for every contingency. He tapped out a coded message to his sister, Renee. One word: initiate. She arrived within the hour, her calm presence a balm against the storm gathering beyond the walls. In the kitchen, while Lily played unaware in the living room, Renee placed a gentle hand on the counter. "Is it happening again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Precautionary measures," Van replied, his tone steady. "I don't think we're the target this time, but I need to be sure." Yeah. For the next 72 hours, Van moved with relentless focus. He sifted through encrypted channels, called in favors owed and long buried. This trail was faint but traceable, across 3 state lines, through burner phones and dead-drop bank accounts, before it evaporated near a private airstrip outside Albuquerque. It was all too familiar. The same silent operators who had nearly smuggled Natalie and Bradley out a year ago had returned, as if reactivating an old chessboard. Financial footprints, ghostly communication bursts, encrypted chatter on defunct frequencies. Each clue confirmed Van's suspicion. This was an internal purge, a surgical strike from within Obsidian to cauterize a wound before it bled secrets. With no further indications of immediate danger, Van stood down the higher alerts but kept the guardrails in place. Lily returned to school. Morning routines reemerged. The house, once again, hummed with the rhythm of cautious normalcy. The maple trees browned with the season's turn, shedding their leaves like the layers of the life Van had escaped. 2 weeks later, a new message arrived, buried in a sequence of code only a handful of operatives in the intelligence community would recognize. Its text was cold, clinical. Rayburn terminated. Obsidian protocols. File closed. Van stared at the words for a long time. There it was. Confirmation, final and unyielding. Bradley had outlived his usefulness. Obsidian had executed its own. That evening, Lily twirled around the kitchen with theatrical flair, recounting the exploits of her day with all the breathless joy only a 7-year-old could conjure. Van listened with a half smile, letting her words wash over the shadows that still clung to the edges of his mind. So much had fallen apart. The illusion of his marriage, the quiet betrayal that had shattered his family, the ghosts of Natalie's double life, and her father's corrosive legacy. Yet here they were, all lived together unbroken. From those ashes, Van had reforged himself, not as the pawn he'd once been, but as something harder, clearer. A man stripped of sentiment, sharpened by loss, defined by a single inviolable priority: protect Lily, no matter the cost. Forgiveness was not in his nature. Betrayal left no wound unremembered. Natalie had learned that lesson. Theodore lived with it in his cell. Bradley had taken it to his grave. And should another threat emerge, some hidden claw reaching toward his daughter, Van Mercer would meet it with the same ruthless resolve. His vengeance didn't burn hot. It waited, calculated. It was as patient as it was pitiless. But not tonight. Tonight, Lily's laughter filled their home like birdsong. And in that fragile melody, Van found peace. Not the naive peace of safety, but the earned quiet that followed a battle endured. The future would come, marked and unpredictable, but they would face it on their own terms. For now, they were safe. And for Van Mercer, unyielding sentinel, relentless defender, father forged in fire, that was all that mattered.